Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me over here is James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, man. I feel like we did this a couple times already today. It's kind of
Number
interesting.
three.
Yeah.
Just keep lining them up. We'll keep knocking them down. So we just decided we had a an appointment pop through and have an emergency today, so we have to reschedule that one. So we figured there's actually some stuff going on that's been happening with some of the minor league guys today. So we figured we'd pop on and do a little impromptu thing, um, and figured we'd answer some of these issues that have been going on. So right off the bat, Husky Bardo pops in and he asks, "Who's next man up if someone gets hurt in the rotation?" And this is a good question because today, earlier in his AAA start, Drew Thorpe left his game in the second inning before the second inning started with elbow discomfort. So where he was competing, at least you would think he was pretty much a lot. If he was healthy, he would be a lock to get into the major league starting rotation. So the question comes, we had Shane Smith that's taken up a spot. So, I mean, do you think that the next man up is Bryce Wilson, as he was who we had slotted to take that spot in the first place?
Yeah, my thought would be he's probably the next guy in because then you could just replace him with a different reliever. I mean, there were some tweets today too about Jairo Iriarte looking pretty good, like during his like minor league backfield game, whatever you want to say. So, I think he's in Charlotte. Obviously, as far as I know, Nick Nastrini is serving as major league starting pitching depth right now. He's not being moved to the bullpen or anything yet. So, I would say like those two guys. So what Wilson, Iriarte, Nastrini probably is what we're looking at here. I mean, if you get in a real bind, you could start Jonathan Heasley because the 2025 season really just doesn't matter all that much, right? But yeah, I think that's where we're at this point. And then obviously, like, you have like what Jake Eater is in Charlotte. I don't know what that role is going to be. I feel like that might be a bullpen role. Y- you know, there's a lot of guys hurt. I mean, we would have said Mason Adams and Kai Bush, but obviously both are on the shelf as of right now. And even like a guy like Juan Carella, who was on the 40 man, is also, had Tommy John. So yeah, it's been kind of a rough spring as far as injuries go, but that's why you need a whole bunch of these guys as we've kind of talked about.
Yeah, I had somebody mention to me earlier on Facebook, was saying, "Oh, well, give it 60 days and Thorpe's going to be getting TJ." And I just, like I said, yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible, but I mean, he had a bone spur cleaned up off of his elbow, and per the organization, it's never been a UCL thing. So him immediately, to immediately take the jump to thinking that he's going to have TJ, I think is a little bit premature here. I would like to think that possibly maybe there's some debris in the elbow that's causing discomfort still, and maybe that's the issue. I mean, I don't, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I would hope that we're not looking at another TJ out of
Yeah,
this
and
stable of.
I mean his MRIs have mostly been clean. That's why it was just like weird, I don't know. I mean, but look, I mean it sucks for all these guys. It's not the worst time for it, obviously. Like you don't want this to happen like when they're good. So, if it is a lost season for a bunch of them, we'll be doing this podcast hopefully next year at this time, like talking about like some of these guys like coming back soon, which, when they're a little bit closer to winning. But yeah, no, I mean it kind of dampens things, especially when I think you wanted to see Drew Thorpe was the headliner of the Dylan Cease trade. And I just, even with this, even if it's minor, it doesn't seem like we're gonna see him soon now at this point. So that
Yeah.
part kind of stinks.
So Wolf Larson's asking, was Eater getting starter reps? I mean, he hasn't made starter innings
No.
in a game yet. But I mean, I have to imagine in his his side sessions, his bullpens that he's throwing, I would like to think that they're keeping him stretched out.
Well, because even in the like the spring breakout game, he was like a one inning guy. So I don't know. I mean, if they said that they were like converting him to relief right now, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't really know how the Charlotte rotation stacks up though with like all the injuries and the
Yeah.
rumors about the Birmingham rotation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's a perfect segue for that information. So it was um, mentioned today by Bannister. It was Brian Bannister, right?
Well, so yeah, Brian Bannister like had a call with some of the media, and then James Fegan like on Blue Sky put out something that basically said that like Bannister insinuated today that Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Grant Taylor, and Wickham and Gonzalez would all be in the Birmingham rotation. And then I do believe Merkin wrote something about it as well.
I I don't know how to feel about that, and we've talked about this before. The big worry for me here is the Taylor innings.
Me too.
Um,
Like I think Hagen's probably fine. Like I thought Hagen Smith would take the opening day start in Winston and Schultz would take the opening day start in Birmingham, and then it would just kind of be a fait accompli. Like 4 starts later, Smith is in Birmingham anyway. So that one I think is probably fine. Like it doesn't matter. He's gonna be on a 5 day turn as like the number 2 starter behind Schultz or whatever. Maybe the number 1 starter and Schultz is the number 2. I don't know. But I mean, the whole thing for those guys is they're supposed to be pitching every 5 days, taking their normal rotation turn, and I just don't know that Grant Taylor is necessarily going to do that. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't know if he's going to do the Noah Schultz pitch every week thing or only go 4 innings or whatever. But yeah, I mean you're going to have to massage his innings in a rotation of guys that are really important that need to stay on turn.
yeah, I guess my thinking here is that my original thinking was that you were going to have Taylor following Hagen at least for the first month of the season. And if, obviously I figure Hagen Smith is going to move to double A, right after that was my thought. But then you are allowed the possibility of, keeping Taylor in advanced A to allow him to, like they did with Noah last year, where he was just getting his innings in, and you watched right from the get go that he was overpowering the advanced A hitters. I mean, it was not a contest. I think at most he gave up like 3 hits or something like that in one start. So that allows you to let him get some innings under his belt. And then if you feel like he's not being challenged, then you move him up just like they did with Noah. I think I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's a pretty aggressive assignment right out of the gate.
Well, and Grant Taylor hasn't even pitched at Winston. Like he's got to go from 19 innings at Kannapolis to Birmingham. Which look, I mean, you watched him pitch in spring, and people watched him pitch in the spring. Like he can probably handle it. Like his stuff is good enough. Where I think he would have went to Winston and kind of probably shoved too. I just thought that they would kind of do that and then do the promotions. But look, they do have like a bunch of lower level pitching and other even like recent college picks who could all just be in the rotation at Winston-Salem. So maybe that's just their thought process. They're going to put as much high end talent in Birmingham as they can. But then I think there's questions there too about like how quickly are you going to move this thing? Are they going to be more aggressive like for 2026 than maybe some of us were anticipating?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting conversation as well because you do have all that college age pitching that you need to get innings. You also have guys that are going to be returning from injury. Cole Seamus is going to be coming back here at some point. Connor McCullough as well, also going to be coming back. Um, so I mean, there are going to be innings to be had in the lower levels. So I don't think it's really a question of can they fill the rotations down in the lower spots. I mean, I think that that's should be fairly simple. Um, I will say I feel kind of bad for Pat Leland because now he's not going to have Hagen Smith or Grant Taylor to anchor that rotation, which was something that we kind of thought was a given right out of the gate, that he would be given, this starting pitching that was just like devastating right out of the gate. I mean, they would get promoted eventually, but at
Right,
least
but
it
he'd
would
have
give
it for
him
a
an
bit.
yeah, it would give him like a nice like soft landing, if you will, of sorts,
Yeah, it's
Um,
not. It's probably not all bad, right? Because he'll have what? He'll have Aldrin Bautista. He'll probably have like Seth Keener if he's healthy. He'll have Lucas Gordon in that
yep.
rotation, who's a polished college arm. You might have Tanner McDougal. So sorry. He just yeah. And then Kannapolis, like I'm just curious to see how many of the super young dudes they're willing to just give innings to in Kannapolis. Like, you have guys like Luis Reyes who was in Arizona. You have Christian Opper who
Hopper, yeah.
has not made his full season debut yet. You
Lacombe,
know, yeah, Matthias Lacombe, who was the internet Brizuela, who was pretty good towards the end of
Brizuela, yeah.
last year, and then there
Yep.
was, so there's a whole bunch of these guys. There's Tommy Vale down there. Yeah, I mean, there's just all sorts of guys. They took a couple in last year's draft, so yeah, I think it's just a matter of they're just going to push their talent to Birmingham. Then the question is like guys like Tyler Schweitzer, Riley Gowans, are they just in Charlotte? You know, like are those guys like does Tyler Schweitzer benefit from all these injuries because he's the next like closest to big league ready back end type guy who probably will be given a chance if he's pretty good in the minors because there's no reason not to, especially because I think he's Rule 5 eligible this coming December. I mean, does he effectively replace your Mason Adams, Kai Bush, go to Charlotte and see what happens?
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly that just the amount of depth that they had, just how quickly it's just kind of dwindled here, just due to you know what, four Tommy Johns and
Right.
Drew Thorpe elbow injury and
Mhm.
Mason Adams elbow injury, and we still don't have answers on that as well. Um,
I mean, the good thing is
yeah,
that it stays as organizational pitching depth, right? Because like it's not like I mean, they'll come back, like it'll be fine. Like pitchers get hurt, right? And they don't always come back the same, and some of them come back better, and we'll see all of that. But it's not like these guys have Tommy John and then they're out of your organization. You just have to get through a minor league season somehow.
yeah. So last thing that I had, just as a topic here to do this short stream here, was that Shane Smith has been added to the rotation. What's up, Trey? How you doing? Shane Smith just got added to the rotation. So, well, actually, he got added to the 26 man, but we are hearing
He's in the rotation.
rumors
Yeah, you heard
that
it
he
here.
is part of the rotation.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting.
I do know people that maybe want to go see Shane Smith pitch, like people close to him potentially. They don't know necessarily when he's going to start. So, like April 1st is their fifth game, but they don't necessarily need the fifth starter to start that game. So I don't know what they're gonna. I don't know how they're gonna really approach this or not. You know what I mean? Like, did they skip him the first turn? Did they just go with it and give Burke extra rest? I'm not really sure. I mean, I think those are some of the questions we'll get answered over the next week.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening that follow all of Future Sox's podcasts, Hot Takes and Heaters was gone last night because one of our guys got pneumonia. So they will be back on next week for Hot Takes and Heaters, and
Yeah.
they will be hopping on, and they hopefully. And James and I talked about this off stream because we don't know for 100% that that we will actually have the full roster, but they should have the full roster when they go on, literally about 12 hours
Yeah.
before the home opener here.
Well, we should have like roster moves as far as like we'll know who's been like sent down to minor league camp and we should know who's been added to the 40 man, right? So, that sort of thing. I forgot that you told me that he had pneumonia. I assumed that Jacob just got sick from eating one of those disgusting horseshoes because he lives down in the Springfield area, and those things are gross.
Horseshoes?
Yeah, you know what that
Or
is?
I have no idea.
Oh, yeah. So it's like this, think of like a meat plate with French fries like all over it, and then just like disgusting brown gravy like poured over the top of it, where you have to
Huh.
eat it with like a fork. Yeah, they eat these things down in Springfield where he's from. So
Well,
we
I
went to a
mean,
we went to a coaching clinic down there one time, and this will only take a second. And like three of my football coaching buddies like ordered this monstrosity, and I got a double cheeseburger, and it was like one of the best decisions I ever made. So
hmm. I mean, I'm not going to talk bad about regional delicacy, because the first time I heard about poutine,
yeah, it's kind of
I th-
like poutine actually. Yeah,
I was the first time I heard about it, I was like, French fries, gravy, and cheese curds.
yeah.
It's like, who would do that? And then I went, bopping around down the road, and I go to Montreal, and there's a poutine place right around the corner from this place, Club Soda, up in Montreal. And I walked over there and I grabbed some, and it was one of the most delicious things I've ever had in my entire life. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe the horseshoe at some other place other than where you went to.
Yeah.
Maybe it's awesome. I don't know.
Maybe it'll cure his pneumonia.
I mean, it could. You
Yeah.
never know, right?
Yeah. So obviously Sunday we're gonna come back live with Connor McKnight where we'll do kind of a baseball preview, but we will not be on then again until the following Sunday. So any just quick like I don't know if you've glanced over the roster. I was trying to break it down a little bit today because I do think there's some locks like on this team. I think, the final bullpen spot I think is gonna come down to some combination of like two of Jordan Leisure, Frazier Ellard, and Tyler Gilbert. I feel like Gilbert's on the team because of what they traded for him. But do you go with the third lefty and Frazier Ellard, or do you let Jordan Leisure make the team? I just kind of think that that's probably the decision at this point. I think they're going to add Mike Clevenger, which, people are not in love with, obviously, but that seems like it's happening. And then you have your Gus Varlands and Penn Murphys. Like I think the bullpen's pretty set other than those last couple guys.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, personal things aside, Clevenger's been pretty solid
It's
in
a
his
lot of
appearances
pitches
in
too in
spring training.
relief. Like he's just throwing his whole arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Throwing his full arsenal. And I feel like the stuff is playing up, and he's missing quite a few way more bats than I'm used to seeing him miss.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that, whatever, your personal feelings might be on this thing. A couple of other things. Wolf Larson mentions, how is Josh Rojas's toe?
I think did he say
Um,
he's going to play through it? It's just a pain tolerance thing, I believe.
yeah, it's a, fracture
Yeah.
in his big toe.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably doesn't feel good.
No, it probably
So, I
doesn't
mean,
feel
there's
great.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially,
So,
it's in his right foot,
yeah,
or is it in
front.
his?
I think it's his front
It's
foot.
his land foot. Okay.
Yeah, front foot. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean,
He hits lefty, right? Yeah, front foot.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it would be his front plant foot. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I guess no matter which direct, I mean, feet when hitting, that's a important thing for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. If they want to let him do it, I
Mhm.
mean, like, make him sit for 2 weeks and let it heal, and then just come
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Like,
And
why?
it does
Like, why are we even doing this?
I know. And it does seem like on the offensive side, like they might just let Andrew Benintendi and Austin Slater make this team after not having many spring training reps. Um
Yeah,
so
Benintendi started games today.
yeah, so then it starts to get to be where like I don't know how many roster spots they have cuz Vaughn at first, Vargas at third, you got two catchers, you got five outfielders. I mean, your last few spots are like Lenyn Sosa's out of options. I think he's probably on the team, but
I think so.
Josh Rojas is also probably going to play some second and short. He's on the team. I would think Brandon Drury gets added to the 40 man and makes the team. So then, you're talking about Jake Amaya, Brooks Baldwin, and Mydroth for maybe one spot. Mydroth's not on the 40 man. Um, so I don't know,
I
you know?
after, conversations and performance, I'm still thinking that it's gonna be Baldwin that gets that spot, but, I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah, I
we'll
mean,
see.
when guys like Jim Callis come on local radio and say that they expect Mydroth to be the opening day shortstop, like I, kind of listen to that. But yeah, I mean, he's hitting 100 and he's not on the 40 man, so I don't really think he has much to prove in Charlotte. But like I could see them just not wanting to make the addition yet, sending him down, and then in a couple weeks he's there or something. And it's not even a service time thing because he's not, like that's not important with somebody like him. They just literally might not want to cut somebody to have him on the team after the spring that he had.
Yeah, I mean, but I will remind you that Jim Callis is also the guy who told us that Brooks Baldwin was their favorite guy in the system
That's what
almost.
I mean. Like I feel like somebody
So,
told him, "Hey, watch my draw. He's going to be the shortstop." Otherwise, he doesn't say things like that.
yeah, I
But
don't
that
know.
was
They
also
like both
before.
guys.
But that was also before he had some of these issues. And I think I don't think they're worried about I don't think Brooks Baldwin is a guy who we have to be like, "Oh man, he needs to play every day." Cuz his big league role is going to be utility guy most
Yeah,
likely,
no, for
right?
sure.
So if it's that it's not like he needs at bats in Charlotte, if he's not playing all the time.
Yeah. No, that is true. Also, another move that was made earlier today, Oscar Colas was sent packing to AAA. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I don't even I don't know. I don't even know that he is necessarily safe in AAA. I don't it just seems like a waste of time at this point.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I mean, to be plain, just completely honest here, I don't feel like I've seen any improvement in his game since he came to the White Sox. In fact, I would
I
say
think he's worse.
I think that he has actually gotten worse since being with the White Sox,
Yeah,
and I
I would
don't
agree.
think it's the instruction.
Yeah, no, I think he's probably kind of tough, but I just it's also like what do you want to do with this roster, right? Cuz I feel like Wilfred Barris might go to Charlotte and he's semi important, right? So then how many of these non-roster invite outfielders are you sending to Charlotte and are they a priority, right? Like is Cal Mitchell in Charlotte? Is Maton in Charlotte? Like are these guys and obviously you have a couple of guys in your org already who some Jolks is on the team and DeLauter is on the team. They're not on the 40 man, but they're probably on that Charlotte team. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the weird thing is that over the last couple of years, we got who was that we got last year? Was it Chad Pinder?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we signed Chad Pinder to be on the Knights. They signed Rafael Ortega. They signed. Oh, I mean, there
Yeah,
was
there was
just so.
a whole bunch of
y-
veteran type guys. Yeah.
Yeah, they always do this every year. So I mean, maybe this year they don't. You know, because they finally have come to the place in the
Right.
roster where they think that they actually have to figure out what they have and
Yeah.
know whether or not they're worth keeping because they're all so close to the Rule
What is the
5.
status of is Bobby Dahlbeck in minor league camp or is he still up?
You know,
I don't remember seeing the reassignment.
I don't think he's been
Um
reassigned yet, but
okay.
you know what? Maybe he. Hold on, I will.
But
I will find that.
the Charlotte season starts next Friday, correct? Like the same I think it's right around the same time as or next Thursday. It's right around the same time. So I would
It's
think that we have
close.
that roster uh probably by the afternoon of the first game, hopefully.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, basically anytime there is a White Sox affiliate, or I mean even the White Sox for that matter, anytime there's a roster announcement, like the full roster announcement, they don't release it until
What I will
basically the
say,
first day.
do you remember last year though they did it in a very timely manner? It was the first time in since I've ever done this that it was
Yeah.
I think it might have been 48 hours prior. I was stunned. I was like if Chris Getz can do this, I'm a big winner here. Like
But and I'm going to tell you exactly why that happened. Do you know why that happened?
Why they were early last year?
Why they put them out in a reasonable amount of time?
I don't.
Because I had the rosters 2.5 weeks beforehand.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That's
of
why.
course. I'm hoping we have them again so we can write our
Yeah.
previews.
If I had not done that, if I had not gotten lucky with that last year, they would have done it on the same day. I mean, like when we were talking to Andrew Murphy, he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, how do you know?"
Well, I always usually have rosters pre-written and then I wait to publish until they publish or get the go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want the info so I can write. Like
Yeah,
that's all the only part
100%.
I care about, you know. So
I have looked through
yeah, I don't think he's been
about
cut. I
s
mean, the
he is
transactions
not.
page is probably all you would need, but yeah.
Yeah, I
So
guess I could have done
yeah,
that too.
so there are some guys who theoretically, like him, what is it Nick? It's Nick Maton, right? Like
Yeah, Nick
Nick
Maton.
Maton, like
Yeah.
so I mean like technically like these guys I guess could still make the team in theory.
I mean,
He's been good.
Maton, Maton, he's done some things.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. I mean, he was like
Yeah.
played for the Norfolk Tides last year. Like he played every game.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you
And
know,
he hit probably 4 or 5 home runs against the Knights last year.
yeah, he'll like Charlotte, I think.
I mean, that's the thing though, is that these guys always come into Charlotte and they hit bombs. I don't know if we sign them if it's going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Did we talk Sunday about Sean Burke or no? Or do we not know it yet?
I don't think so.
Yeah, how about that? That was
Yeah, that's interesting.
good for him. That's cool. I think Chris Getz has a thing, right? Where he's like, which guy has the best stuff? Okay, start him opening day.
Yeah, it was announced on Monday because I remember Chirizi and Beef talking about it on the Au Jus
Yeah.
that day. So
Yeah.
it was
So I
announced
think
on Monday.
I think it's safe to say like Burke has probably the best stuff in the rotation currently. It's just he hasn't harnessed it all the time, and apparently he's had a good camp, and they're happy with it. And well, Shane Smith might have the best stuff, but
That's
you know,
I was gonna
we
say
will
something, but
we will see. Yes,
yeah, yeah.
I mean I'm glad we're out. Like we're going to opening day. I'm glad it's Sean Burke and not Martin Perez, right? I mean I
Yes,
don't need to see that. So all
yeah,
good
and
there.
and Martin Perez looked great again today.
Yeah, I just don't care. Right. Like, yeah, it's like
Right.
if I'm
It
gonna
just
be there, I don't yeah. I'd rather see a prospect pitch.
yeah, as they say, it's inconsequential.
Right.
So
I hope he's great and they get a prospect for him. But
hey, look at this.
I don't need to be in attendance for his starts.
Colton says the MLB Network was nice and gave the White Sox a 62 and 100
Dude,
record.
that would be a fun season, I think.
I'm hoping. I told Beef I was hoping for 63.
I
That
heard
way we
that.
could avoid
So you could be
losing
63 and
100.
90, but I still want to be the worst record in baseball.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Or
I don't.
bottom 3. Cuz the
Yeah,
good thing about like if you could stay bottom 3, the Rockies are also probably bottom 3 and they can't pick until 10th. They have the stupid rule this year against them. So
yep.
you're in good shape. So as long as you have a bottom 3 record, you're going to have pretty good odds and boy oh boy, like I don't want to get too involved in the 2026 draft class when we still have a 2025 draft, but the top of that class going to be fun.
Yeah, I we talked about this with Justin Lada from Locked On Guardians. I feel like we're probably I don't think that there's any, assuming that they do good talent evaluation. I feel like no matter what they do at 10, there's still going to be plenty of guys
Yeah.
with huge upside
Yeah.
at 10.
I think the biggest thing is going to be like organizationally, and we'll talk about all this like in the lead up. Like, you know, are you opposed to taking another pitcher? Do you take a prep guy if it's the best guy, or are you trying to line up a college bat like with this quick moving core that you have? You know, so I think there's just and look like you want to take the best guy. Like I get it, right? But you know, sometimes it's like I like looking at it as how much talent can you get like with the totality of the 20 picks, right? So I think you told me there's a college bat they really like. That seems like the favorite right now, just because you could kind of see him playing with Teal and Caro and Montgomery and all these guys. But I mean, you know, I guess if there's a high school bat that's the best guy on the board, like you just do that and whatever. But
Well, I mean, if Ethan Holiday falls to 10, to me, I look at that as it's pretty much a no brainer at that point.
yeah, and it's settled a little bit where it's like I have no idea who the number 1 pick is. So the only thing I
Oh,
know is the number 2 pick will be the first guy to the majors. So that's all we know right now.
who was the guy who the White Sox drafted in the 19th or 20th round that didn't
Oh
sign?
yeah, Miles Bailey is at Florida State.
Yes. Have you seen him?
Yes,
Oh man,
that would have been
I
nice, right?
so mad. Well, I mean, we
We knew it
talked
wasn't going
about
to
this.
happen. Yeah,
I
but
was super psyched. I was like, maybe they have one of those George Wolkout deals where they,
yeah,
are saving a bunch of money and they're just going to pay him, but they're going to draft him super late. No, that did not happen, and now he's hitting tanks at Florida State, and he
as a
looks like an
freshman.
absolute monster. Yeah.
Have you seen who's the Japanese kid that's playing college baseball? He's
Oh,
awesome
I
too.
forget what his name is. Yeah, he's been.
Rintaro or something.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious to see how much of a like commonality that becomes, right? Like how many guys from the Pacific Rim are just going to start coming to U.S. colleges and playing college baseball.
Well, I mean, if Riku Nishida has his way, there's going to be a bunch
I know
because,
that's his plan,
he's,
right? Yeah,
yeah, if you guys haven't paid attention to his social media, like one of the things that he's really trying to do is he's trying to get Japanese born players. I don't know if he's hitting Korea and Taiwan and all that, but at least Japanese born players, he's trying to get them to do exactly what he did at Oregon, which is come over here, play baseball in college here, and hopefully get drafted. So it's
yeah,
a pretty neat little program. So um,
pretty interesting. So we're going to have a couple of podcasts out like over the next few days. So we recorded an episode with Dan Hayes that's already available if you're listening to this show. Highly
awesome.
recommend.
Oh yeah, I guess if
Yeah.
I release
Yes.
this in the
Yes.
morning, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Highly recommend that one just because there were some stories on there. There's lots of stuff about Justin Ishbia and the White Sox. He sets the record straight on some rumors that the White Sox were able to get Luke Keeschel from the Twins. That whole thing was ridiculous at last trade deadline. So that one's a must listen. In addition, to this one, obviously, and we got Connor McKnight this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and skip that outro on that stream and just move straight into our AL Central preview of the Guardians with Locked On Guardians, Justin Lada. Thanks.
You're
All
good.
right. Justin Lada from the Guardians and
What is it? Lockdown
I'm
Guardians, right?
the
Yeah.
Locked On Guardians. Man,
hmm
I butchered that. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that later. How you
The
doing
Guardians
tonight,
don't pay
Justin?
me. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, well, there you go.
yeah. No paychecks from that yet. I'm still waiting for those to come. I've been accused many times that I'm on the payroll, but yeah, we're
Ooh.
good over here. We're looking forward to the season. It's what 8 days away at this point. It's getting
Yeah.
pretty close. Hard to believe.
Fans haven't seen that payroll. They can't afford you. Cleveland? Come on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
It costs a high price over there to say good PR things on the air.
Well, it's so speaking of not spending any money or not spending a whole lot of money, you want to go ahead and run through the what the Guardians did in the offseason here?
Yeah, I mean it was interesting off season. They were definitely a little more active this offseason than they were a year ago, which is really strange considering they were coming off a good year before and they didn't do anything and they made the playoffs. But they did trade away some core pieces, right? They ended up moving Andres Jimenez to Toronto. They flipped that return to Pittsburgh to get Luis Ortiz, Josh Hartle, and Michael Kennedy. They kept Nick Mitchell in the deal from Toronto. And then the key piece that I know you guys, all the White Sox fans, will be glad to hear is they moved Josh Naylor out of the AL Central. So no longer the owner of Guaranteed Field. He's down in Arizona. So you guys can keep seeing your therapist about that. If he can't hurt you anymore, as other White Sox fans have said. I know. So that was a strange move, though. I will say. I understand it from a long term perspective for them, and I know there's been some debate about where things were internally with him. It's a more of a long-term outlook, but it's also a strange outlook for a team that's coming off of an ALCS run. They did add a lot of pitching. That was kind of their mandate over the offseason was their starting rotation was the worst I think we've seen it since the Terry Francona era started a decade ago. So they went out and they added Luis Ortiz. They brought in Slade Ciccone in the Josh Naylor trade. They brought back Shane Bieber, and John Means is in now here, who won't be here till the second half. They added Paul Sewald and Jacob Junis. So a lot of pitching, and they're going to need it because they've already been tested in spring training.
They pick up Carlos Santana as well to replace Naylor.
That's right. Santana's back. Yeah, and the Guardians claim that the only reason they were able to trade Josh Naylor and or they were inclined to make that move was because Santana said he was willing to come back. And actually, Santana had what we heard was a 2-year deal with Seattle to go back to Seattle, and he turned that down to come back to Cleveland because he loves Cleveland. But he's 39 and he's done a great job taking care of his body and preparing for the season. So maybe he can fight off Father Time one more year. But Cleveland definitely looking for a little more stability, I would say, in the lineup with some of the moves they made this offseason.
Yeah, I know, like teams or people always joke like not to trade like with the Rays, right? When you kind of talk to them and it's like, oh, they want a guy, like hang up the phone and keep him. I kind of feel like some of the arms Cleveland got is like a little bit similar. Like we're not going to talk Pirates, obviously. I didn't really understand that trade, like from their end. You're kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's like Luis Ortiz for Cleveland, and even like Josh Hartle, like that's like the perfect type of guy that Cleveland turns into something. And then right away when I saw the Arizona trade, it's like the comp pick is nice, but Slade Ciccone, right? Like I just feel like when the Guardians want a guy, like I might be hesitant to like trade them a pitcher.
Yeah, especially pitching. I mean, to be fair, I guess you said the only team that you don't want to trade with is the Rays. They did acquire Tobias Myers from the Rays a couple years ago for Junior Caminero, and that blew up in their face. And look where things are now. And Tobias Myers is a great pitcher, even though I know he's hurt right now. But yeah, I mean, Josh Hartle was clearly a guy they liked in the draft a year ago, and I think they got their pocket picked a little bit by the Pirates at that. I think they were maybe on track to take him where things. I think that was the Joey Okie pick for them. I can't remember who they took, but I think they were clearly interested in Josh Hartle. And I know Hartle went through some things in college the last year, chasing velocity and over reliance on the cutter, some weird situation with the catcher there. So I mean, it sounded like Pittsburgh had already kind of worked the flaws out of Josh Hartle's game a little bit. So giving him to Cleveland probably was a big mistake for the Pirates, and they're being tested for their depth now too. But yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay was also interested in Slade Ciccone too. They wanted him. So our big thing was like, well, if Cleveland and Tampa Bay are interested in the same pitcher, that should definitely scare you a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
Luis Ortiz thing, yeah, same thing. Luis Ortiz threw a 7 inning, or he threw a shutout against Cleveland in September, and I was at that game actually. And he was fantastic. He's having a rough spring, but I see the talent there for sure.
How much?
Talk about the Rays trades and not talk about Kyle Manzardo?
Yeah, I was going to bring it up too. Yeah, like how much is that a factor into like making the trade that they made? I mean, obviously, like what Santana's a stopgap, but Manzardo's there long term, I would think, right?
Yeah, that's what they're hoping. I'll be very curious to watch how the Guardians deploy him this season. They've been very careful about not exposing him to lefties, and in the minors, he traditionally has struggled against lefties. I will say it's a small sample size, but he did better against lefties last year in AAA. So there is that, but they have been pretty reluctant to expose him to lefties, and they've been reluctant to allow him to play first base. Maybe he'll learn from Carlos Santana to play first base a little bit, because obviously Santana's been a good defender for a couple of years now, and I think he's deserved a Gold Glove a couple times and didn't get it. But I think they have to hope he's the middle of the order bat. That might be the one trade they've won with the Rays, and I still can't. We'll see how it plays out with Kyle Manzardo, but that trade for the Rays still baffles me because Aaron Savali was a guy who constantly gets hurt, was not at the best of his abilities, and really the Guardians wanted to trade the Rays Shane Bieber, and it was supposed to be Bieber for Manzardo plus, and then Bieber got hurt, so they just had to scrap it and go Savali for Manzardo, but. Yeah, I mean Savali's been okay with the Brewers. That was a very strange trade, but yeah, I'm watching how they're going to deploy Manzardo this year, and if they're ready to take the gloves off a little bit and let him play a little bit more, especially since David Fry won't be around the first half of the year to platoon with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're used to thinking off seasons are underwhelming, and then seeing your team compete somehow. It's kind of frustrating as a White Sox fan, but did they like kind of what you just went through with us, right? Did they do enough, do you think? Or is it never enough?
I don't think the Guardians slash Indians have ever won the offseason in my lifetime. You know, I'm a spoiled baseball fan. Let me be very clear. I was 6 years old in '95 when the Indians took off for the first time in years. So I have been spoiled my entire life with baseball in Cleveland. Um, and you know, they signed the Eddie Murrays, the old Hershiser's, they got David Judd, all that stuff.
What was the
I don't
weird
think.
What was that weird like the Michael Bourne year? They signed 2 free agents, right? That was like kind of big.
Oh yeah, they did sign Michael Bourne and Nick Swisher. They were
And Nick
coming off a
Swisher, that's
very
right.
and
Yeah.
a
How
yeah
could
and
I
a
forget?
very yeah and Brett Myers, which I can't, I don't know if I can tell the Brett Myers story on the air, but I have a story about that. They did sign him that year
Yeah,
too, but
The White Sox traded for him. Brett Myers is a bag. Yeah.
yeah, well, I guess I'll just say it. Brett Myers like searched his own name on Twitter once for me, and I can't remember what I tweeted about, and he saw it. He saw my tweet about him. I tried to write a story about him when I was a full time sports writer, and um, I was waiting around his locker, and he was giving me all kinds of grief about waiting around his locker, even though he agreed to do a story, and he was actually pitching well, and I was trying to do a good story about him. And anyway, that's a weird digression. I don't think Cleveland's ever won an offseason. Maybe that one, I guess, but like they signed Mike Zunino and Josh Bell after the 2022 season where they made the LDS and they fell flat on their face in 2023. So yeah, I don't really recall in recent memory Cleveland ever winning the offseason and going and doing well the next year. So yeah, quiet off seasons are nothing new here, and fans are frustrated, and I get that. But they are returning a lot of the same players from a year ago that made the ALCS, and their starting pitching can't be any worse than it was a year ago.
Lots of injuries and all that stuff. That was a rough one for them on that front anyway. So what, going through all this offseason stuff, what are your expectations for where the Guardians are going this year?
I think their expectations, are still to win. I think our expectations are hope the starting pitching is good enough to win a lot of 3-2 baseball games, because I think the offense is going to have a lot of struggles and growing pains. Like Stephen Kwan, All Star last year, but after the All Star break, he was horrendous until the playoffs, which was so strange. Yeah, they need Kyle Manzardo to grow up and grow into that middle of the order role. They need Carlos Santana to fight off Father Time one year for one more year, and they need anybody, to claim second base and right field for their own. Like second base and right field right now are just an absolute mess. Juan Brito, who I think they want to have the job at second base, looks like he's started to find a little more confidence in spring training as of late. I think he's put a lot of pressure on himself. Not a great defender, guy who the bat has to carry the profile. I know we'll talk about Chase DeLauter a little bit, but he's hurt again. I think the good news is this might actually be, ironically, the best Guardians outfield we've seen in a while. Quan is good, and I actually am excited about Lane Thomas this year. I think Lane Thomas, full healthy this year, will give them some production out of the outfield they have been missing for, I don't know, since the days of Michael Brantley.
So you think like just a playoff appearance is fine? Like, do you have to win the division, or you just kind of want to get in? Because we're doing these season previews with everybody, and I think I kind of feel like this division could be 1 through 4, like in any order. Like if you could tell me right now, I could finish with any of the teams winning it or any of the teams finishing fourth, and I could probably figure out a reason why. Obviously, the White Sox holding up the rear in fifth. I didn't even include them, but um, so just for them, like, and obviously, like, what Stephen Vogt is second year manager. It's not like anybody's getting fired or anything, but I would think playoff expectations though firmly.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Yankees won that series last year 4-1, and I would say for 4 out of the 5 of those games, they were in all on 4 out of the 5. So they easily could have. I don't want to say easily. They could have made the World Series. They had a pathway to the World Series a year ago. So I think it's fair to put the expectation on them that they should win the division. I understand Detroit made a late run last year, and their roster's interesting, and the Royals are interesting and grew a lot last year. The Twins, if the Twins are healthy all year, to be honest with you, that's my favorite for the division. I think, but we've been saying that for how many years now for the Twins, right? Like Correa, Buxton, Royce Lewis is already hurt, so maybe it's already in the bag. But if they somehow get 100 games out of those guys, I think the Twins probably do win the division. They are the most talented team. But is a wild card spot a disappointment? Maybe not, because I think they have the talent to win in the playoffs, and especially in the short series with their bullpen. if the starting pitching improves the way it does. So I think getting in is really the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, the expectation should be to repeat because there's not really a reason they shouldn't repeat internally.
So, I mean, what do you think as far as the Guardians' overall season this year? What do you think could possibly derail them getting into the playoffs? What would be their Achilles heel?
Probably definitely the offense. I mean, if they don't, if nobody figures out second base, I know we'll talk about Travis Bazzana maybe. If they don't figure out right field, the bullpen. Look, the bullpen. We looked this up. They had the best bullpen ERA, I think, since the 2013 Braves. No one's had a bullpen ERA that low in 12 years. That's not going to happen again. It's just not. Like, this bullpen could still be good again in 2025 and not be as good as it was a year ago. So they're probably going to need the starting pitching to actually come back to normal levels and make up for where the bullpen's going to regress. So, if Shane Bieber comes back in the second half and it takes him a while to figure it out after Tommy John, I think they're counting on him. If that doesn't happen, maybe there's not enough of the rotation there. Gavin Williams had a great spring, and Tanner Bybee is Tanner Bybee. He's really good. That's two guys. Everybody else is kind of like, Luis Ortiz has struggled this spring. So offense, and I think the starting pitching needs to do its job and help out carry the bullpen that took on a huge load a year ago.
Yeah, so I mean, like the opposite of that, right? Like the path to kind of winning the division then is just like the pitching rebounding a little bit, but you're going to need some performances out of the offense, I would think, right?
Yeah, the pitching's got to perform without a doubt. I think it's like I said. I think they're on path to hope to win a lot of 3-2 games. Defense at second base won't be as good as it was a year ago. Yeah, it's going to be about internal growth. Can Kyle Manzardo step up? Can Brian Rocchio get better than he was a year ago? He had a good playoff run, but he was very poor offensively in the beginning of the season. Will they eventually get DeLauter or Bazzana up here? Will they have some young guys that emerge in the offense? The good news for them, truthfully, I think, is they have a good farm system. So if they're in contention, they could trade for whatever they need offensively. The question is, will they be in contention? And will there be something out there for them to trade for? Because I feel like the trade market the last couple of years really has stunk. You guys are the only team that has really been trading anybody. And from what we know, the White Sox don't want to trade with the Guardians. I know the Guardians wanted Eric Fedde last year, and the White Sox wanted nothing to do with that negotiation.
Yeah, we kind of heard the same thing from the Twins side earlier, like just kind of it's a little bit interesting. So I'm going to, get into some prospect talk. It's what we do. So obviously Travis Bazzana last year, the first part of a loaded draft class for Cleveland. How quickly could we see Travis Bazzana?
Yeah, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, and some of them are really beyond his own control. I don't think we'll see him before the second half. I think probably we're talking August or September, but that's really going to depend on the Guardians' contention situation. If the Guardians are not in contention, they have no reason to call him up. They're not going to burn the service time this year. So, and the other half of that equation is, can this team contend into August and still have a need for Travis Bazzana? Because that would assume that whoever's playing second base until August stinks, right? Like, it's Gabriel Arias and Juan Brito. It's maybe Angel Martinez. Can they get bad production out of second base? They did last year, to be fair, offensively, not defensively. But can they survive long enough to be in contention with a bad hitting second baseman to have the need to call him up? So I would say probably August at the earliest, maybe even September. But it all depends on their season contention wise.
Is he going to start in Double-A?
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. I think he acclimated himself well enough at high A. He definitely struggled out of the gate last year to get his feet wet and adjust to new pitching and new environments. And I wouldn't be surprised if he struggles out of the gate this year either. But yeah, I think the expectation is he's going to be an Akron to start the year.
Yeah, so I just we kind of talk about it on our show with some of the high impact pitching that the White Sox have coming. I mean, I look, I'm not in tune with how quickly the Guardians have been moving guys through the system, obviously, but I just think it's tough. Like you send Travis Bazzana to Double-A and he's awesome. It's like really tough to slow play it at that point, like with expectations, like it's just, and obviously like he could go back and struggle. I usually wipe out the stats right away from college guys. Like I think he's going to be a stud and quickly. So, you guys are going to hear it like for sure. Like if he's awesome and not in the big leagues.
Yeah, if we get to May or June and Travis Bazzana is setting the Eastern League on fire and Juan Brito Gabelarius is slumping to a 200 batting average and whatever, oh yeah, it's gonna their calls are gonna be fast and furious for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if they move to AAA quickly. But I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe he does play so well that their hand is forced, and there may be an argument for the fact that they may not make it to August in contention with what they have, and then he might be so good that they have to have him up there. So you're right. That would certainly make some service time issues interesting. But yeah, I could see him putting the pressure on him to do that.
Having a guy like that and having to bring him up later on in the season and skip the possibility of getting the extra pick for a rookie of the year, that seems pretty tough to me, especially with a talent like that.
It could be. I just don't know how much the Guardians really care about that. Like I know they care about the draft. Obviously, that's how they build. But I don't know how much they care about that. And to be fair, this might be a loaded rookie class again. Like we might have a really good rookie class this year, so it may not even matter. I would like to believe that they are focused on winning and they're not going to care about that. I think it's to me. I think it's less. It's the other end of things. I don't think it's the PPI pick. I think it's the service time thing all the way. I think it's they want to make sure they're getting a seventh year out of him, and I also think it's an ARB thing because the next question it boils down to is can they get him to sign one of those pre debut extensions? They haven't had any luck doing that with anybody. They haven't really announced an extension in a while, truthfully. So we'll see how that goes. I really think it's the extra year of control, and I think it's the arbitration control if they can't get him to sign a contract. I don't think it's the PPI as much as it is the extra year of control.
So James put this in the questions, and I don't want to make you mad here, but Chase DeLauter, me and James are watching him from afar, and as White Sox fans with injured prospects, we know exactly how that feels. He just went down again. What was it? Was it an oblique? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it was an oblique this time. Yeah, at least it wasn't the foot.
He's just always I think he's so good, man. Like he's just like hurt all the time. Like
Yeah, actually, maybe people find this amusing. My wife actually likes to play MLB The Show with me occasionally, and she was playing when it came out, and I think she was facing the Guardians, or I forget who she was, but Chase DeLauter was playing, and she goes, "Oh, that's the only way he'll see the field this year is MLB The Show," and I was like, "Wow, that's." I mean, maybe I don't know. Like I said, at least it wasn't the foot this time. It was an oblique, but I don't know. I'm not a medical expert, but every time I see a guy in spring training and then an oblique injury, like I remember years where Jason Kipnis had an oblique issue. I just feel like those things linger and it's not good. But there's always something. I mean, the guy's never played 100 games in the minors. He had an injury in college. It just always does seem to be something with him. I'm just hopeful that maybe like at least the foot's healthy, and this happened during a defensive drill. Like how much worse luck can you really get?
well, so DeLauter's 23. He'll be in AAA, right? So I mean, is it a thing of like, he plays, pretty well for 5-6 weeks? Like you could see him in the big leagues. It's like whenever, or are you just kind of at the point now where like you're going to be surprised whenever you see him, like because of the injuries? I mean, he's knocking on the door.
He is. No, I think if he would have been healthy this spring, I think there was an outside chance he could have cracked a big league club for them. There's really nobody in right field for Cleveland that has a strong claim to the job. Like Will Brennan, I was big on the Will Brennan bandwagon a couple of years ago, and I've been wrong so far. I know a lot of fans in Cleveland love John Kenzie-Noel, Big Christmas, and he had that big playoff home run. But this is a guy to me that just it feels a lot like I can't even compare him to a prospect because that busted because the guy just chases everything. He doesn't make pitchers come into the zone. So like right field's wide open. The former right field top prospect George Valera, I don't know if you guys remember him. Same thing. He tore a patella tendon in his knee last year. He's constantly hurt. So yeah, if Chase DeLauter gets back on the field in what are we at 10 weeks now? It's been 2 weeks since the surgery. So if he gets back on the field in 10 weeks and has a month of games where he plays with his hair on fire, I would not be surprised to see him up. But yeah, it's definitely going to be. You're going to have to see it first that he's on the field consistently.
Hmm. So which other the Guardians are going down the stretch here, and they're looking for impact guys other than Bazzana and DeLauter, assuming that everything's on the up and up there. Who else could they possibly grab that's going to make an impact with the big league club?
Are we talking trades possibly, like outside or
Prospects.
internally?
Yeah.
Yeah, hitting prospects is going to be kind of tough this year. Like, there's a need at catcher because Bo Naylor hasn't really solidified himself offensively, which is
Oh, here
strange.
it
Like,
is. Cooper Ingle, baby. There we
yeah,
go.
like, well, I was gonna say actually Cody Huff because Cody Huff is above Cooper Ingle, but yes, I don't see them making that change in the year, but like Bo Naylor needs to solidify himself offensively. When he got drafted, man, like you never could have convinced me that the glove would be ahead of the bat, but the glove is ahead of the bat. So if Bo Naylor has a really tough stretch to start the year and Cooper Ingles crushing it in Double A like he did a year ago, those calls are going to come for sure. It's going to be tough offensively. Like, they got to play Manzardo, but there's CJ Kafis in the minors. I don't really see a lot of help offensively coming this year. Hopefully it's Juan Brito. It's more from the pitching side of things for them this year. Like Joey Cantillo made his debut a year ago. I have high hopes for him. Doug Nikhazy, they added him to the 40-man roster. Parker Messick, who we're gonna have on Locked On Guardians, just a promo there, a shameless promo. He had a great spring breakout. He's not in the 40-man roster, but like maybe there's a way for him to make it. Franco Alaman in the bullpen. He's also got not an oblique issue, but some kind of hernia that I can't pronounce. Never good when you can't pronounce those things, but he's got some kind of hernia. He was hurt a year ago, but if they need some bullpen help, like Franco Alaman could factor into the bullpen at some point this year. So they have some guys that are close. But the majority of like their top prospects are probably like Double A and below right now.
You got anything, James? All right. Well, thanks so much for the insight, Justin. We appreciate it. A lot of information there. A lot of prospects. Like I follow the minors. I watch a lot of baseball, and you're naming off guys that I don't know, especially when it comes to relievers. So I'm gonna have to look some of these guys up now. You want to let people know on the way out here where they can find your work?
Yeah, over at Locked On Guardians, if you're interested in a Guardians perspective of things, we're Locked On Guardians, and that's free everywhere you get podcasts. We do a daily podcast. We're out 5 days a week, and we're out there talking about the Guardians every day. And I'm also doing a lot of my prospect work over at Substack. So next year in Cleveland, I actually just did a 90-page prospect book on top 50 prospects and last year's graduates. So if you're interested in a whole big Guardians prospect book, I got one for you. If you want to do some light airplane reading.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for popping in, Justin. We appreciate it. Look forward to catching up with you again and seeing what happens after this year, and see how many of the predictions come true here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your guys' work. You guys put out fantastic work. I know things aren't happy with the White Sox at the big league level, but I think good things are coming for the White Sox, and I love all the work you guys put in. You guys are top notch. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
Thank you.